lost their land and were forced to a new Indian home in what is now Oklahoma.
The United States, moving from the Florida Everglades through Indian Territory, what would become Oklahoma, eventually locating
citizenship into the Muskogee Creek Nation were both back in court this afternoon. Attorneys for the pair say they weren't given all the discovery information they needed from the other side to prepare for trial in just 3 weeks. I was in court today for the second motion to compel hearing.
A lot of obstruction and delays.
That's how attorney Demario Solomon Simmons described the discovery process so far as he works to get Rhonda Grayson and Jeff Kennedy's citizenship into the Muskogee Creek Nation. They're Creek freedmen and both applied in 2019 but were denied.
And you're going to see at each step they ignored that. At each step they were contrary to the law that governs this space. And that's what we're going to prove.
Attorney Solomon Simmons says the Treaty of 1866, Article 2, was never invalidated. He says it provides citizenship rights for the freedmen. It's the crux of his argument. In court Tuesday, both sides went through dozens of discovery questions, line by line. The judge decided on each one, whether the Attorney General representing the Citizenship Board should provide more information or if the provided answers stood. Many questions dealt specifically with the treaty and information surrounding the validity of it. In one discovery question, the Attorney General said the Citizenship Board did not have any documents that say 1866 had been invalidated.
We believe that if they had that information, they would provide that information, because that is the crux of the case.
Solomon Simmons asked for a summary judgment, but the judge said more evidence would be needed. The trial in this case is set for April 4th. In court today, the judge also awarded fees to the plaintiffs and ruled that the attorney for the Citizenship Board would need to supply some additional responses and documents by Friday or face additional sanctions.
across the United States, moving from the Florida Everglades through Indian Territory, what would become Oklahoma.
A neighborhood in Tulsa, Oklahoma, called the Greenwood District, was a bustling community of Black-owned businesses. Tulsa locals know that period of Greenwood's history as a kind of golden age.
If you can imagine just like an old-time downtown, things like movie theaters, pharmacies, hair salons, and so forth.
They called it Black Wall Street.
It was a mecca. It was a huge success.
But Black Wall Street was also an anomaly. It thrived at a time when the KKK was incredibly active in Oklahoma, and the nation had just been through the Red Summer of 1919, when white mobs murdered Black people in dozens of incidents across the U.S.
There needed to be a sort of match or an igniter tossed on these embers. And that trigger event was an incident that involved two teenagers, Dick Rowland, 19-year-old Black boy who shined shoes downtown, Sarah Page, 17-year-old white girl who ran an elevator in a downtown building called the Drexel Building. He went to the building, boarded the elevator, something happened, Sarah Page began to scream. They both ran out of the elevator.
Now, we don't know exactly what happened in this elevator, but a day later, Rowland was arrested and taken to the courthouse. The local newspaper ran an article claiming Rowland had assaulted Page. Even though Page refused to press charges, the article was essentially a call to action for whites.
A large white mob began to gather on the lawn of the courthouse. Dick Rowland was in jail on the top floor. A number of Black men, several dozen, marched down to the courthouse to protect him, some of them armed. There was a struggle between one of the Black men in the small group and one of the white men in the larger group, and things sort of went south from that point.
Hundreds of white people descended upon Black Wall Street, armed. Black residents withdrew behind the railroad tracks that marked off the Greenwood District. Some of them were armed and fought back, but they were outnumbered by the white mob, which shot their way through. The white mob murdered, they looted, and they set fire to Black Wall Street.
This was the strategy, if you will, of how to deal with these communities, with these successful Black communities. The effects were disastrous.
For 2 days, the Greenwood District burned. Martial law was declared, and the National Guard was brought in. By the time the massacre ended, Greenwood was in ruins. More than 1,200 homes were destroyed, and 35 blocks burned. The exact number of casualties is harder to pin down. Some initially only reported that white people died. Others reported somewhere between 30 and 100 mostly black casualties. But estimates now put that number closer to 300. As for those that survived, thousands of them lived in tent cities in the months that followed, and were left to pick up the